And Lane's controlling the slides.
Oh, yes, and this time I will record it.
All right, so we're going to go live again. Thank you and welcome back. So we are now into some workshops. So first up, something that did come up in the public forum, which is containers on reserve. We've got Maria and Gordy joining us with us.
Wi-Fi working, going to work or not plan? I mean,
So
we can start.
we can get started.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we are here to talk about containers on reserves. And so I'll give you a bit of a short overview about why we're bringing you this work, what we've learnt, and the direction we're proposing. So across our district, there have been a growing number of shipping containers on reserves. Most started as a temporary storage for clubs, events, or operational needs. Then over time, many of them have stayed longer than intended, and more groups are asking for them. The issue that we're seeing is that containers can affect the look and feel of reserves. They take up recreation space, and in some cases, they become semi-permanent without clear authorization. Some are well managed, others not so much. They might be unsightly or sit outside any formal lease or license. At the moment, we don't have a consistent district-wide approach, which means that decisions vary between reserves, and staff then spend a lot of time navigating the reserves at process in a case-by-case sort of situation without any clear policy direction. So we're looking into this now because we want to protect the amenity and recreational value of our reserves, ensure fairness with all of our community groups by treating requests consistently. We want to move along away from the long-term reliance on containers because they're not good permanent solutions always, and then give clear guidance to both staff and clubs so expectations are transparent. Right now, some containers are authorised, some aren't, and many don't have time limits. So with an audit of our existing reserves, existing containers on our reserves and at the end of 2025, now is the right time to set the framework. So we've reviewed how other councils around the country are managing containers, and the themes are very consistent actually. Most councils don't encourage containers on reserves. Containers often start as a short term but become permanent by default. Where they do allow them, there are usually strict conditions, so screening, colour, cladding, and time limits. Approvals are nearly always tied to leases or licences under the Reserves Act, and there's a clear shift towards shared storage solutions rather than every club having its own container or own storage area. This review helped us understand the balance between supporting community groups and protecting reserve values. So we are proposing a council policy supported by a clear internal procedure. And the key elements of the procedure will be that containers will generally be discouraged, but still possible where genuinely needed, and there are no practical alternative options, such as shared facilities. There would be a time limit for a maximum of 2 years and with no automatic renewals. Applicants would need to show that they have explored shared or integrated storage, not just defaulted to a container. And any approved container would require a license to occupy it with clear conditions around design, colour, screening, location, and maintenance. There may be a fee as part of that. Existing conditions would be reviewed and transitioned over time, so it's effectively like a sinking lid approach. And council-led operational containers would still be permitted. Obviously, there's like a lot of common sense that needs to go into this because sometimes, one of the points that we made was, it's all about whether there are any practical alternatives, and sometimes there may not be practical alternatives, but that's then something we have to work through. This approach is going to give us consistency, clarity, and fairness, while still giving community groups a workable pathway of where storage is essential. So today we're actually just starting the conversation early. We want to get some early feedback before we finalise the policy and bring it to council for consideration at the next council meeting. So we're looking for your thoughts on the proposed direction, anything we've missed, and how this will work on the ground in your ward, because obviously that's, again, another important piece of this. It might there might be different, different things with this ward by ward.
How many, what are we dealing with? How many containers on reserve land?
Good question.
This ward,
So overall, we're looking at about 8 containers, although it, yeah. Right, yeah.
3 of them on park at the moment.
Where they go, oh, right.
2 we talked about this morning, and 1 for the sharing at the back of the stadium.
Isn't it, there's a rugby one there as well?
And it could be right from there.
So
What the rugby one?
For them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
There's the one on Dunstan, but that's on Dunstan land, isn't it?
Yeah.
The one on Dunstan's on Dunstan land.
On your stadium, on your park, and the rest of Alpha Street, and the training Toto.
yeah, so it might not seem like a lot, but I guess the main thing to really get across here is that if we are dealing with them on a case by case basis, we can't, it doesn't work for us to be dealing with one sports group in one way and another sports group in another way. So this is not about coming up with silly rules. It's about having a really clear.
Consistency.
And having clubs actually talk to each other, because often the problem is the clubs are falling out, and they
And even if there's only a few now, that's not to say that in the future there's not going to be more. So it makes sense to be consistent now.
Oh, it's an easy fix.
Yeah.
That's what people are doing.
and they're doing a bit of health and safety this morning, which is people climbing on them, so think about that too.
Sorry?
Yes, so you're talking about fees, a bit about cost recovery, but what about the concept of a bond? So that if it gets left there, we've got, we're covered to
Good idea.
That's probably a very good idea. Something we can work down.
My initial concern would be, like, I think you mentioned something about a 2-year, like within 2 years, they put it there. I mean, most clubs would try and work outside that 2-year.
The 2 years is sort of a consistency through the reserves act, because licensed occupiers, we don't have a lease that's sort of supposed to be short term. Sort of deemed sort of short term, and it could be 3 at most, but I mean, they need to be thinking about what the next going to be after whatever that is, and they can come and get a renewal, but it won't be automatic, so, but we put a paper up, you guys have it
That's
with
good
it.
teaching, I think that's good teaching the real, keep them thinking it's a long run game.
Yeah.
It could be, but not necessarily.
Like St Molyneux, like there's, well, I think there's 4 containers there probably, is there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there. Have we considered like putting in a designated area for them, you know, like actually?
So what we would think longer term is understanding that problem, and is it worth perhaps building a storage building within a larger reserve, if there's not enough for the stadium, there's not enough at the netball pavilion, there's not enough at the pool, there's not enough at ice and line for storage for other groups, do we do that, you know? And that might be part of that redevelopment of the stage to the west of the netball club, whether that will be, you know, whether that will need a building, or if we allow other club buildings that we might specify that they need storage for, you know, other clubs other than their own within that building. Council may not contribute to that, but it's just trying to make things a bit smoother for clubs to use and make it practical, because there's a long way to go if you're playing football, have your storage, I guess, where they've got it at the moment, go all the way over to football with a container. So, you know, you can think of practical things. So we might really say, here's a small, you know, building or shed, nicely designed there, that's just for storage.
And my experience with clubs is that sharing a facility like that is probably a no-go. As soon as gear goes missing, then it's a lot of finger pointing, things goes on.
There's different lockups and, you know, different rooms, like that room's
Splitting it in
football, that room's rugby, that don't share it
yeah, that's what sort of what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And if you think about the caretaker shed at Molyneux, that's all like visible, not many people know that's one there.
Yeah.
Despite people going past all day.
Yeah.
And it's pretty central. Yeah, so I could see something like a shared facility model.
That's good feedback.
Oh, yeah, on a designated area, like, yeah.
Yeah, there are, so like I've seen other councils, you know, at a big sports complex, they might say that, you know, if there was no option of building long-term storage, then they do look at having permanent setups of containers in a specific area. They've only got so many in that area. And it works really well for them, but it really just, I guess one thing we need to consider too is sports groups. If we're looking at containers, they might want to have a container on one side of the reserve and one on an entirely different side of Millennium. Or
But that's what we could regulate though, that would be a designated area, and if they could walk across the field to get their gear, then like, that's not a.
And if it's discounted, you're going to require screen and paint with the right colour, not complete brown to rust, you know, so.
Another concern would be the fee, you're going to charge fees for it as well, there's just another cost to, the reason that people put these containers is to avoid fees and to cheap storage, and usually the container is sponsored by somebody that's put there, secure facility. So that's the reason they're actually doing that, is to save costs. And if we start introducing costs, then
Well, there's no fee if you go to our fees and charges first. We're thinking if that's an option, it might only be $1, you know. Fee or something.
it's a nominal, that would be a nominal charge would be.
Yeah.
But the bond idea is not a bad one if you wanted to move them.
Might be a fee, yeah.
6 or 10 grand for a container, so $400 bond. Yeah, the jobs inside the end of the year.
That's right. Well, yeah, it probably need to be the cost of moving.
The cost of moving it,
Yeah, we should work that out.
yeah.
I wasn't here for the discussion about climbing on containers, but that was really strong feedback that I got from other councils, was the importance of separating them out a certain distance and doing things to try and avoid that.
So only really.
Kids do it anyway, look, there's one on the high school grounds, there's the film on top of it.
Yeah, talk about it.
It all over.
Not playing.
Yeah, sort of like hardcore, I guess, but
Keep them real close, so it's just one big area.
Thanks.
No, thank you very much. Hopefully that gave you some good feedback there.
if anyone else has anything to add, feel free to just push us.
Yeah, sure.
And now we have got Holly QP and Paul to talk about the roading policy development.
Unfortunately, looks like PowerPoint presentation is not going to work.
I was about to note that this is the challenge when we go to other locations, that sometimes the technology doesn't want to play ball with us, so.
I've emailed it all through, and I've also,
Yeah.
so I've emailed the PDFs and the full PowerPoint, and the links up for it.
Thank you. Format two.
All right. I suppose just some brief introductions. I'm a collaborating asset engineer. Been working on the policy.
Yeah, and for those who haven't been paid, Paul's lead voting manager. Yeah, so.
Right, so just to get straight into it, the existing roading policy was from 2015, so it's overdue a review, which is in the process of being drafted. So the majority of the sort of sections within the policy are not fundamentally changing. A lot of this process is just getting it into the new template, rewriting it for ease, adding and just making it a bit concise and easy to manage. But the actual sort of context of it isn't going to be changing too much. So what we want to achieve out of today's sort of workshop is, I suppose, just highlighting some of the areas that have changed a bit more significantly and are worth that discussion and awareness. So just sort of going through the first one there, that's just sort of an outline of what the different sort of, I'd say, sub-policies within the main document were. And then on the next one, we've got the ones that are sort of highlighted orange and pink. Those are areas that are being removed from the policy, or suggesting to. But that's not to say that they're being removed as council policies. We're just shifting them into areas that make a bit more sense. So the following sections that will be removed are alfresco dining and hawkers and mobile activities. because those will be covered under the Trading in Public Places bylaw, and that's a better place for them. We've also looked at stock movement across roads and roving stock along roads, to align with legislation and what other councils do. We're suggesting removing those from policy and creating a distinct bylaw for them, because that's sort of more in line with national guidelines.
So has legislation changed?
No, it's more just previously it was covered in the bylaw and the policy, and it sort of makes more sense to just have it in one or the other. It just simplifies the document, means you don't have to change both. If something changes at the moment, we'd have to change the policy and the bylaw, and so it just separates them out. We've separated road stopping out because this one, it's originally been in the roading policy because it has road in the title, but it's managed by the property team, and they're actually currently writing the policy document as well. So what we're considering there is actually making that a standalone policy that's managed by the property team, so they're not having to come to us and ask permission to make updates if legislation changes or things like that. So that's something that we're considering there.
That's not going to have an effect on roading's input into road stockings though, with moving in, probably this part of the process will still be that roading will be advised and ask feedback on, it's quite often these, quite often these engineering aspects sort of as well around road corridor and things like that. If people were proposing to reduce that to a level that doesn't allow us potentially to do what we need to do with the road, in the future. So yeah.
So those are the ones that have been removed. So now we'll just have a look at some that are being maybe more significantly changed. There is a printing error there. The one that is blocked out says temporary traffic management, which is the first one that we'll look at. So as part of this, we've actually changed it to working on or near road reserve, because there are other processes. It's not just traffic management. There's corridor access requests, which is gaining permission to work on the road reserve as well, which doesn't fall within the same remit as temporary traffic management. So it's just making it more appropriate of a title. And instead of having separate chapters, we've sort of brought in things like the event and civil work road closures to fall within it, because it all comes under that same area. And we've introduced motorsports events as its own sort of sub-policy as well, because that previously wasn't covered in.
Management has, like the cycling events has changed significantly. That rather than being prescriptive, it's the onus has gone on us to submit a plan that we think's okay, which has taken a lot of heat off us. Did this come through on?
Yes. So the what you're talking about is previous. It was called the Code of Practice. So you'd hear Coptum talked about a lot. That was the prescriptive guidelines that were from the NZTA. You can do this, and this. You must do, and there wasn't much movement. Yes. So that has changed in the legislation. So now it's the Health and Safety at Work Act 2015 and the New Zealand Guide for Temporary Traffic Management. So we've changed the policy to reflect that. And essentially it means that they have to do their risk assessment and make sure it's based on that and with the purpose, not just what a pre-drawn drawings tells them.
Shift the bonus back onto yourself. From the event organizer piece and managing the risk.
Can we buy some surface cars?
Yeah. So can I just jump in on the change to New Zealand Guide? So in July last year, we received a letter from NZTA, well, all councils did, which basically mandates a transition to the New Zealand Guide, which is a risk-based guide going away from the prescriptive Coptum guide. We're currently in the middle of delivering a project to roll that out, and we're doing that jointly with QLDC. So there's a couple of reasons around that. One, obviously there's a cost benefit, because we are doing cost share on that with them as well too. And also to get some consistency between the QLDC network and the CADC network, and that makes really good sense because we've got the same contractors working on both networks. We've got the same TTM providers on both networks. So our target date's 1 July this year, and that was part of the requirements of the letter received from NZTA. We had the first milestone in December, which was delivering a transition plan to them so that we could demonstrate that we were moving towards it. And we will be NZG TTM 1 July this year, going forward for all our work on the network. So we are seeing applications coming into traffic management plan applications coming in the new format with risk assessments. And we're dealing with those as they come in, but we are also still receiving Copland based ones as well too. So it's just a part of moving through that
What do you
process.
do when you get the older version? Do they have to update it?
Well, currently, our bylaw actually says Copland. So hence why, hence why we're looking for the policy and the bylaw change and actually removing that out of there, because I suppose part of this policy and bylaw review is that there was a lot of repetitive stuff in there where we actually had this legislation which covers it anyway. So why do we need a bylaw for it? Why do we need a policy for it? There's already legislation with good process in it. We just need to fall back on that. So yeah.
It's for us from a side point of view, look at a lot of these costs.
Yeah.
We've probably got a third of the cost. Is it gonna be that knock on for what you're doing on your costings on traffic?
It'll have some effects in some areas. And I think when you see some of the lower risk operations, shoulder works, cyclic works, things like that, there will be. But my gut feeling and what I'm seeing on the state highway, for instance, this summer, there was a number of large resale sites between Cromwell and Luggett. There might have been a few less cones, but when it's a high risk environment, 100 Ks, you've got heavy machinery, people on the road, you're probably not going to see a lot of change because the risk assessment will say that you need that level of traffic management.
It won't change at all.
No, it won't change that much at all, but there will be areas that I think we will see change. And I think you've noted, events, cycling events and things like that. Yes, I think we will see some changes and some reduction in cost to organisations for that. Yeah.
Cool. Continuing on with the temporary traffic management is just the bit more about the inclusion of motorsport events as its own sort of policy there. We're not trying to discourage people coming and driving on the roads and having fun, but it's more to sort of, covering for damages and just making sure that we're doing our due diligence. So it sort of includes pre and post event inspections just to, so we can compare before and after and see what effects it's had. Additional public notification requirements for locals that live on the affected roads. Specifies the reinstatement conditions that we expect them to make if there are repairs, and an optional bond, again, a word that's been brought up before, again, just to cover if we do need to go in and do some repairs on our own right if they don't do what we need them to do. So then the next one is fingerboard signs. We've renamed this to discretionary signs to highlight that these are privately owned signs. They're not mandatory.
What's a fingerboard sign?
So they're the little ones that you can see that might say that there's a
B&B
winery.
This street 2024.
Yes.
Challenge Council. Yes, that's it.
We're not talking about the ones that say the street name. It's like the ones that are sort of
The additional one.
blankets down this way. So we've renamed it to discretionary signs. These are privately owned signs, generally for businesses to direct people to places. They're not mandatory for the way the road works, like stop signs and give way. In the past, non-standard signs have been used. So generally, like the brown fingerboard signs aren't a nationally used standard. So what we're proposing is to align with the legislation and the traffic control devices manual moving forward, just expecting that people, if they want to use those signs, it needs to meet the national standards, just so that we're consistent with other networks and we don't have the too many signs on a post, which gets cluttered and people can't read them. Existing signs that don't meet the new specs will be allowed to remain, but when they deteriorate and need to be replaced, we will expect them to upgrade them at their cost to the new standard if they wish to do so. Otherwise, they'll be removed.
Seems logical.
So I suppose one of the bigger changes is the next one, which is dust suppression. So just give you a run through of what the current policy covers. It does talk from, it's just a very basic rundown of it, but essentially residential properties on unsealed roads that are within 100 metres offset from the side of it are eligible for 100-metre lengths of dust suppression sealing. You might know that as Otter sealing or Eco Seal. That's the product name, so we're calling it dust suppression sealing. And currently we cover the full cost of that dust suppression seal and its ongoing maintenance. There is conditions in the policy currently that it is subject to our funding and the metalling program schedule. The policy also refers to oiling, which is now a prohibitive activity, so we remove that as well. So we've had a look at some alternative options and had a look at other neighbouring nearby councils, and we are the only one that offers 100% subsidy on this. So other local councils, so the likes of Clutha, Gore and Dunedin, they offer a 50% subsidy to eligible properties. It still falls within that 100 metres offset and 100 metres length. Waitaki, Southland and Queenstown Lakes offer no subsidy whatsoever. It's the applicant's cost to do dust suppression. So we've had a chat about it amongst ourselves. We're sort of leaning towards introducing a 50% subsidy potentially to begin with for residential properties, but we expect them to have been built before the enactment date. So if someone goes along and builds a new house or sites a new tiny home right up next to a gravel road and requests it, it will be 100% their cost. There's no surprises that they're next to a gravel road. And we're still allowing that ineligible properties and would be able to apply for it, but it'll be at full cost to them.
And just on this, so we have a lot of eco seal sites throughout the district along gravel roads. You'll go across a small section of that dust suppression seal. With the budget that we do have to achieve even the renewals, we would be struggling to renew the sites that we do have, let alone the consistent requests we do get for this dust suppression sealing. So this is a massive challenge to manage in an ever cost increasing environment. And this is something that's essentially it is a benefit for an individual residential property being borne by the wider road budget. And that's where it is, we're going to recommend to council they introduce that subsidy as part of this policy change, albeit they could choose to look at doing no subsidy as well, and that will be a discussion with council. But looking for comfort recommendations from the BCB.
Just to give it some education cost for that, for a 100-metre section of dust suppression seal, you're looking $10,000 to $15,000 per site. And we've got currently we've got dozens and dozens of them that are probably coming near live. And as GP said, we're getting probably at least half a dozen requests a year, which are backing up all the time because of our current policy as well too. So it's a bit of a ticking time bomb. And if we don't put a line in the sand now, it's just going to continue to get worse and put more pressure on funding, and particularly funding out of our unsealed network where we've already got pinch points that we're struggling to keep up with now, let alone introducing new assets that are expensive to one construct and two to maintain going forward as well too.
Just think about rates cap. Yeah. So what's our budget? What is our budget for this?
I think it's about $200,000 a year. For that's both for renewal and new. Correct. It's less than 10 sites, and we do have a number of these sites, and the team have been working on condition assessments of all the existing sites, and there is a list of sites still to be done that have been requested, which obviously would be honoured under the policy that's applied under. And the other challenge we do have is, Ollie alluded to, is we do have people building houses close to the road, and well within their right to then ask request for the eco seal, but it's pretty impressive that being addressed potentially.
Just have to drive through Auburn and low budget.
I'm saying it's one road.
So.
I'm only going to say $1 million. I'm going to give it a haircut. 200,000 a haircut's not going to help much.
No, and that I think as we're seeing challenges around manage these budgets, our unsealed roads, our remodeling frequency and different things like that, that money have been eaten up very quickly in terms of trying to address our gravelling backlog and gravelling some of these tracks and different things. We've had people talk to us around Onslow Road and Holborn Road around the condition of that, and we're struggling to get metal on those surfaces and prioritise some of those tracks over things like this. So it's a bit of a juggling priority. So this is when there's opportunity to stay.
I just put it there, it's given to stay.
Yeah, this is an opportunity to, I guess, put more onus on the property owner that benefits.
And the changing expectations as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, we used to be able to spray a lot of oil on roads for
Yeah.
200 grand. And, you know, now there is an expectation from the community that we don't do that alongside a legal expectation.
So can you explain to me briefly, I'm a bit ignorant, but what the dust protection seal, what briefly, what is that? It's a cheap way of putting tar seal down. What do you
No, I would say it's an expensive way to suppress dust, actually.
of course it is. Well, that's not mine.
Yeah.
That's what is it? Like,
So,
we used to put
yes.
oil on the roads.
Yeah.
Now we put dust. What is?
Yeah, so effectively what happens is, well, where the re-metal, the whole road, might be getting re-metal, so it gets to run a new metal on it.
Yeah.
And then basically it's a really viscous, kerosene-based, bitumen product. Very, I mean, it's the same bitumen that's used to do a reseal on a sealed road. Effectively that's sprayed over top. And it very quickly soaks into that stone matrix, and then once you run a roller over it, that basically closes that whole matrix up. Effectively, you're doing no improvement structurally to the road at all. And you basically end up with a crust about yay thick that's bound together with bitumen. It isn't overly waterproof. As soon as it's not overly waterproof, it's not overly, it doesn't perform overly well with traffic stress, because the road hasn't been improved for strength at all. So I mean, it's an expensive way to suppress dust. It's one of the few options that give you some long-term dust suppressant ability. There are other chemical products that are approved under regional council guidelines, but you might get 3 months out of it, and then you're going to be back applying it again. And those products themselves.
What dust protection seal? What's the limit? Under reasonable circumstances.
How long you can last?
How long is it last? Yeah.
I mean, it's how long is a piece of string? We're tending to get somewhere between 7, 10 years maybe, and it really depends on traffic volumes, because obviously you've got general traffic running across. So
and range.
Yeah, exactly.
And more like their rural property, which has tractors.
Bigger machine.
And typically near driveways. And if your trucks and tractors are using them going up and turning onto it, it does
choose it.
screw them.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the unfortunate thing to the layman driving across some of our dust suppression seals, it looks like a sealed road.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. And we are looking at options, and I have seen it work on other networks I've been involved in, is actually looking at actually doing a reseal over the dust suppression seals. If you can get onto them early enough.
Just lay it straight across it.
Yeah, you haven't got that additional expense of introducing new metal or new gravel, and you can come across the top, and it actually does provide some waterproofing. And that's probably the main mode of failure for because as soon as the water starts getting in, it's a pothole, because there's just no guts. There's nothing in the road. There's no strength in the road. So and just
So
a bit of a ticking time bomb, really.
Well,
it is, it really is, and I think this makes sense. We've heard so much for the last 2 years in the community when they talk this term user pays.
Yep.
So why, this is logical.
Yeah.
Why continue to pay for a single property with everyone paying?
Yeah.
And the pushback will be a lot of those people pay a substantial amount of rates and don't get anything else.
Yeah.
But hey, it's if you're looking at the 50%, at least you're not suddenly saying to them from this date, you are now 100% responsible. It's quite a balanced approach to it.
So you're comfortable with us, with the, putting forward the 50%. And ultimately in time that might again shift, but as a potential.
Well, surely there might be a better product comes along as well, you know, like or another innovation and potentially, you know.
Yeah.
So this is the best product on the market at the moment.
Yeah. I've just actually been talking to a supplier this morning. We're looking at doing a lime stabilisation trial on our unsealed network because we struggle on some of our really steep, windy sections of road with them just corrugating, chewing up, and our, you know, Fulton Hogan just really struggling to try and keep an acceptable level of service. And the supplier, they're actually working with some Australian companies at the moment about being able to inject additional product through the stabilising process that will give dust suppression as well, strength and dust suppression. So that's going to be really interesting to see where that, you know, where that new technology goes with that. Yeah.
If we've got a number of rural sites where you are travelling up a hill, if you've been up the gravel hill,
My driveway.
it gets
I was thinking that.
We went over this morning.
So it's still, we're still okay to use petroleum-based bitumen? I thought, I don't know why someone said that the old Green government had tipped it out.
Well, NZTA, we're talking about mandating emulsified bitumen, but it's still got bitumen in it, like emulsified products, they've still got 70% bitumen in them. I mean, they are much user friendly, they're much, from a health and safety perspective, they're a lot safer as well too, because you're talking at spraying temperatures of about 85 degrees against 180, 190 degrees with hot cutback bitumen. They haven't done that yet. There are some councils that mandate 100% emulsified bitumen. Dunedin's one of them. However, it depends on the supplier too. So, I mean, for instance, Downer and Fulton Hogan are probably the two biggest servicing contractors in New Zealand. Downer are 100% emulsion, and they've done that purely from a health and safety perspective. Yeah, so yeah, it depends on what side of the fence you're on. Really, at the end of the day, they you know, performance-wise, they perform pretty much identically. Could argue that emulsified bitumen might work, you know, you might get better results in slightly cooler temperatures, but generally they're much of the muchness really. But yeah, currently Fulton Hogan cutback bitumen. Yeah.
That sounds interesting. Right, so we move on to your road lighting, no spraying zones and overweight.
So these are just being introduced. It's not changing how we do things in the background. From the perspective, it's just that they were never in the original policy, so we've added them in. Road lighting is mostly just around expectations around the types of LED luminaires that they use, trying to get the lowest wattages while still meeting the dark sky specs and safety standards as well. No spray zones is just how we're managing if people are got organic or they just don't want to have spray near their properties, of how they can apply for that. And overweight and overdimension vehicle permits. Essentially, we're just providing clarity on what council provides with permit services and what they need to go to the NZTA. And lastly, is just the general improvements. So as part of this, we're also looking at either creating new forms or updating the existing to match the policies and make them more user friendly. And it's the new version of the policy, so long as you're looking at it online rather than a printout, will be a live searchable document with links to the relevant legislation and searchable for that as well. Anything?
No.
Well-rounded update,
Yeah.
I think this common sense has
Logic.
prevailed here.
Exactly.
No, well done.
Thank you.
Seems logical.
Thank you. Right, and now we've got a quick break, and then we will be coming back, and we'll have Alex and Amelia talking about the LTP strategy.
Hey, did you want to chat about that, Emma?
Sure.
So, is that, have that combined with Scott?
Oh, thank you guys. We're only 5 minutes over, and I learned a lot about bitumen in that conversation. I'm not gonna lie, I was sitting here, I wasn't zoning out and not listening, I was Googling trying to get later in advance.
I'll ask the question. What is it?
Across just to keep that.
Yeah, we're all starting, Laura, and I'm straight.
I do that quite Right, and welcome back. I hope you all had a good quick break and we'll get straight back into it. We have got Alex and Saskia here to talk about the long-term plan.
Thank you. We're just going to run through a few of these priorities for the Vincent Community Board that we pulled out of your strategy day on December 15th. Sense check that we've got the right ones with you and look for anything more. So we can jump straight into it. And for those I haven't met, I think is only you, Jim. I'm Alex, I'm the strategy and policy lead here. And I'm working on the strategy side of the LTP, currently filling in as project manager while we are hiring one. So what you have in front of you now is our roadmap to delivering an LTP by the 30th of June 2027. That's 349 work days away. So it's not as far away as it looks. And the bird is sitting about where we are now. That's meeting with you five folk to get your feedback. And also meeting with Audit and Risk next week for an update. The feedback we get from here will go to the March council meeting, and then we'll visit you again in April and May and again in August. And I'm sure we'll visit you again after that, but I'll be 40 then, so I'm not really thinking about that half of the year yet. It's sort of blocked out on my mind.
You're young. Oh my God.
Onto the next slide. I had a bit of a loss of PowerPoint this morning. I've updated the figures on the right-hand side for you guys, but apologies, the left is a little out of date. This is our entire LTP team. So you can see we've got the executive leadership team and our little project coordination team that I mentioned. And then on the other side, we've obviously got the mayor, councillors, audit and risk committee, and yourselves all working together to deliver this one. Jumping through to the next one, you should have received a copy of the strategic scan we pulled together for this long-term plan. Hopefully you've read it. If not, because I'm aware you've got a lot of reading, really the takeaway here is we are in a very constrained financial environment with a really high degree of uncertainty of the future of local government. And a very large reform program. So we're expecting this LTP to really be in that constrained space. And that's really what we needed to set with that one. So from that strategic plan, we brought Alicia Mackay, who's a local government strategic expert in to meet with council. And they set some strategic priorities for the term, including the LTP, and that's on the next slide for you all. So they will be 50% prioritising funding, 25% funding protection, 15% attraction, and 10% regional leadership funding, so prioritising. I think those really do what they say on the tin, but a lot of those community board priorities for yourselves are sitting in that protection and attraction space. So protection is looking at custodians of our local identity as we grow and change to keep people connected and to make smart infrastructure decisions. It says much has been taken out of our hands, but there's still plenty we can do. And we'll be focused on future-focused infrastructure decisions, protecting local identity of landscapes and character and community to influence the visitors and workers we attract. And then in the attraction space, it's to ensure that Central is a vibrant place with lots of ways to live and make a living. We want it to stay that way, serve the workers, families, innovation and spirit to keep us moving into the future. And then regional leadership is shaping the future of Otago working externally. And funding, I think we're all well aware of at this point, to become less dependent on rates in central government and more able to spend and invest into the future. So from there, I pulled out your report from the 15th of December and pulled out these key themes. I have missed representation up there, but you guys had a focus on the community relationship, communication, accessibility, responsiveness and consistency. And that doesn't include these shared principles. Those were just the themes that underlay mostly your communication strategy, but also some of the projects you picked out. And then if we just jump to slide 7, which is where we'll pause for quite a while, and this is the projects that we had as listed sitting against that matrix. So I've just divided this table into 10 so you can sort of roughly see the size of the weighting there. And most of the projects are sitting in that protection space with some elements of attraction and regional leadership coming through. What I want to do with you is go through these one by one, double check where you feel the ticks are, and then check
if there's anything else that should be on this list of priorities for council going into the long-term plan. This is for both decision making as we start looking at budgets for the first time, and also the theme of the plan itself, which we have not yet set and will based on this feedback.
And I think also really important for Alex and I today, as we go around all our community boards and talk to you all, when we report back to council, is in particular, so take New Zealand, say Alex will lead you through, is, you know, what's the VCB's interest in what do you want to be put into the LTP basically, so that we can wrap it in. So like Molly Stadium, what does VCB want done with Molly Stadium, or what do you want officers to go away and look at as part of the budget process? So if we could get some real clarity on, and I imagine some of this was absolutely discussed in your last session, but just so we're crystal clear going into that report.
Should we just go through the list to start off?
Oh,
Yeah,
Do you want to start with museums?
okay.
Yeah, there's certainly an element of attraction. It's a little bit like Peter's story on the reserve. They've got schools from Timaru coming to Central Stories now. The way they're going, there's an element of attraction.
I do just want to say I lost my PowerPoint this morning, or where these ticks aren't or where they were yesterday, so do correct me.
That covers it.
And what were you wanting to fund in the museum space? Were you thinking, was that for one museum, or do we have the detail, or where are we sitting there?
But that's a bit diverse too, isn't it? As,
Well, you might not have a firm view. You might be that you really want council to prioritise giving the museum, which stuff I know Paul's working on, but it could be that, you know, that VCB want to be consulted as part of the museum strategy development. So it doesn't, it's just to give us a steer as to where this board's at and what that looks like.
This I am. Sorry.
Here we go.
I was going to say that for me, a big part of it was around, because the museums is around that strategy and how it looks. My concern is that we've got a strategy, you've got 18 months of the current agreement with the Museums Trust. You've got this LTP in its timeline, which don't seem to align very well in finding a way forward for the museums. Because the reality is, some of that funding could potentially need to come from that LTP. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're hearing loud and clear that the VCB would like some emphasis put on getting that work done and trying to line it within this LTP timeline. Yeah.
How about the Boundary Road precinct? I was a little unclear if this was the recycling service or another part of it.
Yeah.
Recycling.
And again, it's a little bit hard to, because I'm for a meeting, that's why we're going to leave at 1:30 with the staff to actually get a bit of an understanding of what's going on there, so I can then relay that back. So it's a bit hard to sit here without all that detail yet.
That's right. This is what you want us to advocate for, really, on your behalf when we go out. Would you say when the recycling centre there's a funding element, particularly in the waste space, or is this more on the protection and environment side of things?
actually recycling gives protection. It is a funding because it'd be nice if it washed its face. It's never going to wash its face, but it's a bigger story than that, isn't it?
The Jim, you're going.
oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if it fits into those categories. I don't know.
What are you thinking?
Well, to me, well, there's a perception in the public that the recycling side of it is not working. They say that and tell me it's not, but like my understanding is that we have a mountain of glass somewhere up in a Cromwell
That's
area.
been crushed now. We did have a mountain of glass.
Yep.
That's because the flushing plant in Parkburn area wasn't functioning.
Couldn't clean it.
That's now functioning. And so we are now back to crushing glass.
Yeah.
QP gave an update on that probably for the last year.
Is there a sale for it or is it, you know?
The glass has been crushed and it's been folded into things like road seal and stuff like that. So there's new techniques on how it's been used. But there was a mountain of glass, and that was because the glass crushing plant wasn't working as effectively, or wasn't working.
It was to do with the cleaning of the glass, is that right?
No, my understanding was the plant itself wasn't working, the crushing. And now that once that was repaired, back to bloody crushing glass. And that was QP.
It was late last year.
We won't let him leave next time.
It's people are talking about it.
It's also a bit of a gap in this matrix of things we have to do, which I found, especially when we get down to wild and pines, that was quite hard to assign because it's sort of a legislative requirement.
Please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the recycling went beyond just the district's recycling, but also into that lost service that we had when Wastebusters left. So it's kind of looking at that recycling. It's also looking at the things that you wouldn't necessarily want to put in the dump that other people within the community could use. And I'm conscious a lot of community groups over the last few years have been looking at options there. Nothing seems to have come from that at this stage. So I think, would that be a part of it, Jim?
Yes.
Quite a different service to the Salvation Army shop and the Kent shop. It provided a different quality of product, I guess. It was more recycling of stuff that probably was never going to sell as readily as, because they're quite fussy now about the turnover and stuff in those shops. Otherwise, they end up with a lot of that.
Machines up as done.
So, yeah, so this is where this was a good, I thought, a good community service for.
You've really justified the funding took with that one too, so.
Well, that's the other thing, because they work with greater or lesser degrees of success in other areas, and it's understanding why do some areas fly with us and some areas don't? Is it public support? Is it the model? Is it, I don't know, is it scale? Well, one of it was salaries, that the previous base plus had a lot of people, so the salaries was an issue. So it didn't watch its space, and they withdrew the service from us, and they just set it on their location in Wanaka. So yeah, no, the grass crushing plant has been up and running since the 5th, since May last year. Part of the problem was the label, and when you crush it, all the labels hang around, and so they're working out a way, or what do you do to try and remove the labels from the glass? Enviro NZ were looking into that, but it was stockpiling the crushed material, and it was being used in projects. So, you know, that's the latest that I've been able to find. So we are crushing glass, and we are utilising it in different ways. You know, the rest of the one, we are building an organics, that's happening, that's been funded for. We are working in collaboration with QLDC. We've received funding from government agency. QLDC are looking at their options. If they don't come into it, then we will scale it back to the size that suits what we'll be dropping in there. But we expect that will go ahead. The QP's team doing it right now, but we expect the construction to be in the next financial year. Mr. John.
Right, so Molly?
Stadium.
Yeah, sorry, just on that last point though, with the recycling, and it's to do with the dump as well. There's a couple of people that work there that have been in touch with me, all right, and said that this is not working, and I haven't really got the expertise to comment on that. So I'm actually not sure what the problem is, but there's been some people. One of them was that crushing side bit, but then I've had somebody else talking about it. But like I said, I don't know what the problem is, but which I need to investigate, I guess.
But you can always just ask QP for an update.
Well, that's what I'd like to have. We had this discussion, and I said, who do we talk to at the council? Who do I talk to get asked my questions? And that was where that's where I'm at, so, yeah.
I was in
So it's, I've put it down as one of my bios, one of my things that I want to, find, address, yes.
Some Molly?
Molly, yes. That beyond earthquakes and thing that I assume that's.
Yeah, well,
This wasn't that one.
The Molyneux part was, there's, a lot of complaints about they're getting access to it. So, my experience was, through, this is not my piece, but anyway, through, we're involved with, Dunstan High School, and occasionally we have a spillover into the Molyneux Park, statement where we have to use the grounds, things like that. And the system that we had was completely cumbersome, that, that we had to give 2 weeks notice or something of your use of the park. You know, how you use get the grounds or the changing facilities or access into that. And often we didn't know 2 weeks in advance because, a lot of that, if I'm talking rugby, was the draw was on a weekly basis. So, and then there was, so that's one sort of side of it, where I feel as though that the sort of booking system of it was not quite. Not quite up to, like, my imagination is that you could, like, it should be an online system that you go in, boom, and if your space is free.
Is that the one where it goes through bookings at COD, so that you go through the email and that's a manual process with another person on the other end?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, have I got news for you? We're literally just look at my colleague at the other end of the table. Her and I have just signed a new online platform that will be the same platform for all of our buildings, our facility in Cromwell, and all of our parks. And we hope to, we're going to start with our parks. Molyneux is one of our first ones because it's quite intricate. You can book rooms, then you can book, you know, a small part rugby grounds to larger parts of rugby grounds, soccer grounds, you know, the same things, useful as different things. But the current system, council invested in about 5 years ago to use for the swimming pool, and it's worked really well there. However, it had worked well for our booking. We hadn't been able to make it work for our grounds bookings. And so we now, in March, we start to roll that out, starting with Molyneux, reaching that Henderson Park in Cromwell, and then it will go across all of our bookable grounds, buildings, facilities over the next, the work program is about 18 months to get that done. So, but that's something we heard loud and clear through this LTPA, was just a new booking system, because it is manual. It's almost one person's job. It's really easy to miss an email and all of that kind of stuff. So, I hope I've got that timeline right, but
more sort of spontaneous as well. Like, clubs don't have the ability of booking the month ahead.
Yeah.
They don't know what's happening in that month ahead. So, so it was just making it more user friendly to the community.
Yeah.
And streamlining that system. So I hear what you're saying.
We might even have that one ticked off without needing
Yeah.
to report.
And I think this is the thing that, because I'm just writing them all down now, going, which ones are actually LTP ones and which ones are just ones that.
operational improvement.
Yeah. And because not every priority is going to be based solely on the LTP. And some.
Idea. Is Wilding Pines an LTP one, or is it just a priority in general?
It was Martin.
It's Martin.
And that was, I would say, more us, that's more on the advocacy side of things. Because at the end of the day, when we look at how much it costs to clear Wilding Pines, it is not a cheap exercise. And central government really holds the big balance for that one.
The issue that would put it on that LTP is that the do nothing alternative is going to cost a lot more than doing something. So it's got to be a long-term plan.
Yeah, we can still list it as, that the VCB reported that, you know, it's an important issue, for this, board, that they want, you know, and they're going to work in the area of advocacy.
but they want council to consider it in their budget. So we can definitely work it in there, even if there's, you know, that we do put further budget.
We can't afford not to address it, just to what extent, if we get a rates cap, if we do this. There's all of the buts and maybes, it says how much we can do, but.
Yeah.
We will
Your priority is clear.
Good news is Margin will be receiving this report, so he's quite able to correct us if we've got it wrong.
Yeah.
Community halls, we've got Beck's Law and Oval. Would you like those ones in the LTP report, or is that again?
That was mentioned, and that's more because there was a further conversation that needed to be had from the last LTP. It's not a new issue. Obviously, there was the, what do we call it, divestment conversation. And it was agreed by council in the last one that the conversation around the ones in the Manahia Valley would need to come up against again once the new hub was built. So it's not a new one, it's just we started this conversation in the last LTP. It does need to be finished.
Yeah.
Because obviously those
New
groups are.
booking system, David.
Shaking, so,
The new booking system.
Yes.
new community hub.
They said the hall's not.
Wouldn't negate
The
the
jury
need
said
for.
it's just not possible.
So, yes, so that's the conversation we need to have next. It was like the hall's not there yet. This one's been, the OK one's been sold. Keep these ones for now, but we need to have a further conversation. And so me adding that onto that list was more about ensuring that, well, it's great to have new things, that we're consistent and we deal with the things that are already slowly moving through the pipeline.
Blossom Festival.
I think that's a bit similar to museums. It is funding, it is protection, it is action, it is leadership.
And again, that was from the last LTP, it was that 2 years in the tourism fund, with obviously more conversations need to be had between that and the next LTP.
It was not contested, shouldn't be contestable, is what we decided.
The next one I've got Blossom Festival, and almost attached to it, or perhaps separately, is the grant spot that you have. Is there anything to note on this one? Is this an LPP or an internal?
Say the grants are always LTP, aren't they?
Mhm.
So, yeah.
And so far for Blossom Festival, I've got protection and attractions. Is that about right, or would you have some of the others ticked there?
I think it was funded for sure, yeah. There's some funding, longer term, but and contestable.
We put 2 years in from the tourism.
Yeah,
It's a stopgap, yeah.
yeah, which is why that was the recommendation from the DCB to give us some breathing room and them so that we could have that bigger conversation around the funding.
Do you want any notes around the grant spot itself? Isn't it?
A little bit of spot. So we need to have a conversation with Rebecca on that. Oh, let's have it in there for now. And yeah, when see a bit more detail.
And you all have my email if you need to change or add anything. So
Yeah.
we're raising through these, we're up to the hospital. Put that as regional leadership because we don't have an active role. It's more of an advocacy role aside from regional deals, which may have a funding elements. That's why it's sitting there. Is there anything else you'd like noted next to the hospital, or is that cover really?
Well, we do hope to see the clinical, upper cliff for clinical health strategy that's administered right now in cabinet. And that determines what the health needs are for this region and Central Otago Lakes over the next 20, 30 years. And so, it will be a great advocate as with the council for that.
And they've got a good handle. I went to the workshop they had in Cromwell, which was people from Wellington. And I think they're pretty well. That shouldn't be hard to miss.
Yeah. No, it should be interesting to see.
Obviously, I'm moving some sort of on paper, yeah.
gotta get onto that.
So yeah, that one's more of an advocacy for us for the time being. And then.
Dark skies and
Skies.
Yeah. But they're not actually looking for a lot of funding, I think, are they?
No,
So I think they're, a mile away there.
it's always been more around.
And changes it.
I think it's about more endorsement now.
Yeah, cool.
Perhaps it was a plan change in Naseby because it was an urban area, but for Vex, it's like backwards.
It's just so simple.
Don't say that they haven't given up on the bigger plan of the entire Vincent becoming a night sky. But I think for the time being, it has been not so much around funding as it's been around endorsement and support.
That brings us to the end of the list as you had it at 15th of December. Is there anything springing to mind as a gap for anybody that you'd like to consider or add?
Look, I have one. We have discussed this, like, so you do have endowment land, that lease for the croquet clubs coming up is 0.4 of a hectare. Something that council will have to consider in this next LTP is around, housing. Do we, QLDC's charitable trust is thinking of expanding. If it does expand, it could come into our district. We had 98 homes in the elderly pension homes that, has equity tied into that. And so a decision for council, it didn't go anywhere much last time, but it is around that type of thing. And if council was of a mind to go down that path, it's already created a trust. I don't know where that really sort of got into abeyance. But the Queen's Township is actually quite successful in what it does. Is there an argument that, because if the council was to look to do something like that, it would need to be an LTP discussion for transferring assets into a trust and selling it for $1, and then they use the equity to build new and expand, and other endowment land that could come up could be turned into housing.
Yeah. I think that's worth the conversation.
And definitely it was transversed by the previous council, I think it was before your time, Peter. And the council of the day, just because of the financial ramifications, it wasn't they were opposed to the idea per se. It really was, I think, my reading around the table was the request to give quite a significant part of the gear didn't ultimately land with that council because it just didn't stack up in terms of the ongoing mechanism as well. But I think those conversations are alive again.
And I think that was a big part of why near the end of the last term, the push on the Abbey Field.
Yes.
It was really that testing the waters again. We knew the last council things. Obviously different situations, but the whole idea was let's dip our toes in the water again, see what the read on council is, so we can have those bigger conversations moving forward.
And that flew through the Abbey Field conversation.
Yeah.
And that's a great, they're up and down New Zealand, so they're not, and it's a simple model. I don't know what sort of size, I can't remember the size of the section they got in there, but to make it fair, because it's combined living, isn't it? You have your own little unit, but you share shared spaces, which is really great.
And I think that's what I liked about the last term was that we were, whether it was the funding for the Blossom Festival with the 2 years and that other funding, whether it was the Abbey Field and the gifting of land, we were setting things up with that long-term view. And so it'd be good if we had some continuation on that. If we looked into, even if it doesn't, affordable housing doesn't happen this time round, we dipped our toes in the water of that conversation. I think it was worth continuing with that.
When we talk about capital, use of capital and endowment, so, I mean, are we in a unique situation? We've got things like pilot operations for Blue Waters now. We've got rates cap proposed now. We've got a bunch of different things that are they unique? Is it a trend that we're going to see for the next 10 years, all these major levers pulled, or have we just got a set of unique circumstances to look at capital assets of endowment land and say, I think there's a case to put on up for argument.
Yeah. I mean,
I
don't know what the standard is. That lease is due to expire, and that's the time to have that conversation.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if you commit to a long lease, then it's off the table for another 25 years or whatever.
Exactly.
I don't know the state of other councils, but the good thing about your role is you can ask me to go find out. So I will find out for you. Okay. Was there anything else anybody else wanted to add to the list?
No, I can't think of.
Just in that case, going to do a quick recap. And if we could sort of guess if they're going to be low, medium, or high, Sorry, I'll just go once more through the list before we switch on. So museums, we've got protection, attraction, and you want me to tick the funding box as well for that one?
Yeah.
And it would be an LTP point, and it's probably got a medium to high cost relative to the others, or would you put medium or low
Yeah.
to high? The Boundary Road precinct would be in the LTP and probably also medium to high.
Let's be honest, let's say high.
Yeah. Yeah, but the reason the last one failed was.
Yeah. Let's not beat around the bush here, let's be honest right from the beginning on that.
Well, if the LTP's from 2027, probably not like it before the LTP.
The only mechanism to do that from a financial perspective is through the annual plan. And the annual plan has already been circulated to the council.
What I'm suggesting is, because it should not be just a funding option. I mean, the idea, if we get it right, is it's not a major funding option.
Yeah.
Wilding Pines, Molyneux Stadium is not going in the LTP, but David's going to roll out a whole new system and solve that problem for us. Wilding is the first one.
Take that box, I mean, take that box.
The Molyneux Stadium, though, this board also approved the earthquake.
Yeah, so where are we at with that?
Yeah, that will, I think that starts in next financial year from July one. Yeah, from
Okay.
yeah.
We also kind of flagged that, it's not well advertised, there's a bunch of facilities and stuff going on that no one knows.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. The climbing and,
Yeah.
yeah, that's.
There's a private business being operated there.
Yeah, but there's opportunities that we should be able to use. The community's missing out on major opportunities with it.
Yeah,
I think it's the football and a bit of cricket.
yeah, yeah.
Did like your communication focus for things like that.
Well, I'd think a bit more of a plan. I'd say a marketing plan for the, for Molyneux Stadium, because it offers a lot more than I think what we're looking at of it. We're putting 1.6 or something into earthquake, aren't we?
And traditionally, some of the smaller clubs have been put off using it as well, you know, so I think, making them more welcome, I think would be, you know, adapting multi-users, I think, you know, so you can get multi-use of it. More use.
Wilding Pines, I've got yes in the LCP. What price do you want me to attach to that one? Low, medium, high, I don't expect numbers.
I think in priorities, as long as we get it in there, the, you know, priorities wise, probably low to medium, I think, but we've got to have it in there. So then the start line.
Trying to say how long everything's a string kind of cost that one as much as you could do.
Well, it's not priorities for us, money, but we have to do something to it. Even a can down the road, it's going to be like 3 waters.
For the halls, I've listed LCP, yes, and the class A, what is here is existing, and the question is on the future.
Yeah.
And Blossom Festival, I put yes in the LCP, and that we're really again looking at the costs into the future. Hospitals, we've got Upper Clifford Clinical Health Strategy to come, we're leaving it in there, pending the outcome of that to see if there's anything the board can advocate for through that. Dark Skies endorsement, not LTP, and housing chip, I put LTP, yes. Cost could vary on that one. Looks like you've got some plans on how you could afford it. Which does bring us to the last slide, which is the next step, which is for all of your feedback to be collated into one report to council that will go up to the March meeting, and then I or Saskia or Amelia will return in April and May and let you know how that went and what's to come next.
Ready?
Is there anything else you'd like me to note? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, that continuity thing again's come up. The outdoor pool, that was another part of the conversation from last time, was it's been retained, but there needs to be a further conversation with the community around the heating.
Yeah, okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
If anything like that does come up, as I said before, just email Saskia or I will keep this list open and keep adding to it. We're looking for pretty much what we've done today. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And what's it going to cost?
Yeah.
And definitely, post the district funding decision, we really want really good input from boards into the process, not just to submit to the process. So in terms of that big, stake that Alex had up earlier, essentially, the main budget, we actually start budget conversations in April, with some of the big asset groups. And we will all be entering budgets, sort of July, August is pretty much when things start getting finalised. Our goal is to have the LTP all done this summer. So in terms of there are things that you're thinking of or you hear in the community, now's really the time. There is through the submission process if something comes in later, but it's really hard once all the numbers have been crunched for council to go yes and add an extra money. That's a big decision for our council. So yeah, now sort of the next couple of months is sort of when you're hearing stuff and you want it in there and you want it brought to council's attention.
So what's that sort of end of March, is it?
Really up until sort of during July is when we're entering the budgets, but we'd have to take anything that has to go to council first. If there was, I don't know, a grand idea about an adventure playground that someone come up with, and it really had some co-funding, and VCB was like, if we put in $100,000, this would just be amazing.
I suspect we'll get a request from the netball courts, won't we?
Yeah, so
that's something that you might have to.
yeah. So that kind of stuff in the next few months. So the door's not closed, but it does get further on the process.
It becomes harder and harder.
Yeah.
Right, we've got work to do.
Right, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Sarah and Wayne, for all of your work getting all of this set up for us. And thanks for coming back, David. It's been nice having you back for a day.
Thanks for having me, guys.
The old band's back together.
The old band.
That's good.
Oh, it's been great. Walk up memory lane.
Amazing.